Hello, I'm Dave March, the Spy Guy, and I have not going to talk about Epstein, I think, for the most part today. I wasn't able to do the show the last couple of days, kind of got devoured by a locust. So woman wanted me to go in town to meet her in Toronto and got very confusing. Luckily, I bought the all-day pass on the train, so it didn't cost me too much, but it was just like sent me in the wrong direction. And then I live in Hamilton, which is a city under the lake effect, so almost all our snow is gone. Toronto, there's still 4 inches of snow on the ground, so I was not prepared to wander around downtown Toronto like that. So I got a few links of things that I was watching earlier today, and I wanted to share and give my thoughts about. And the first one, I haven't got. This is one from Megan Kelly. I haven't really done her stuff before, but we're having a big day because the former Prince Andrew just got himself arrested in England today, and it's causing possibly an abdication crisis. So I thought we'd cover that one first because that's kind of the breaking news of the day, and then we can get into how the European Union is going fascist, and the stuff they're talking about doing in there is just crazy town, like the stuff that you would think would get people in the streets with pitchforks and torches and lighting people up. And then we'll finally be, what's the third video again? I have some stuff on Deep Dive from Daniel Davis, which I've covered before. He's got Larry Johnson on, and they're talking about the state of Russia. So let me push these things back, put it on. Oh, and tomorrow we're going to be having Warhound back again, doing our seemingly looks like our Friday show and regular Friday show. And he's going to cover. We're going to talk about the news of the event of the weeks, and then Saturday I'm looking forward to getting the geopolitics team together to discuss what's going on in what's going on around the world, and because we haven't had those guys in about a month, so they're seemingly around, so we can have them come on and we'll talk about stuff. And I'll also drop the link for them when I meet with Warhound in case some of them have time to come by and talk to us then. So here we go. Close the watch history, go to share screen, and the Prince Andrew stuff.
Dan, great to have you. My goodness, you're the perfect person to talk to about this because there's no better royal correspondent than you. And you've been saying for a long time how unpopular Prince Andrew is within the family and within the British populace. So put this news in perspective for us.
Megan, this is historic. There has not been a crisis like this in 90 years. What happened 90 years ago? The Nazi sympathizing king, Edward VIII, abdicated. Now, there are a whole load of scenarios here that could see King Charles having to abdicate as a result of what has happened today. Remember, in the United...
Yeah, right? Whoa, holy shit. What do you mean this? But he's going to explain it.
Kingdom, he runs the court. This is the king's court. And so the idea that his brother Andrew will be on trial, potentially, I accept he hasn't been charged yet, but we're heading that way and we can get to that. There are now 9 police investigations, Megan, underway.
9 police investigations going on the way. Holy crap.
Into Andrew's links into Epstein. That involves sex trafficking.
I guess we are going to talk a little Epstein after all.
Former Prime Minister Gordon Brown has today submitted a 5-page memorandum to the Metropolitan Surrey, Sussex, Thames Valley Police Department about the Lolita Express and the way that it was used to potentially sex traffic women to royal palaces. And I just want to paint you the scenario that Andrew ends up in the king's court, in his brother's court. Remember, there's only one person in the United Kingdom who can't be charged with a crime. That is the king. And he says, well, my brother knew about this, and my brother paid £1.5 million in hush money to Virginia Giuffre which is what was reported last week by the Sun newspaper, my former newspaper, it feels untenable that Charles can stay on the throne.
Yeah. Well, also, King Charles has got cancer. I think one of the reasons why he was been in power for so long is that he just wanted, because of his own screwed up life with his kids, he wanted to have his grandkids have the most time with their parents as much as possible. So he was just staying in power to give them more time to grow up. Little Archie and all those guys to grow up and have that, and before William and Kate get shuffled in to take over for him. So he wanted to have them have much quality family time as they're going to get, because he knew what was going to happen when he was going to go. And now he's pretty much almost on his way out.
You might remember there was a case, Meghan, about 20 years ago when Paul Burrell, Diana's former butler, was charged with stealing Diana's possessions. And he immediately brought the Queen, the late Queen Elizabeth II, into his trial and said the Queen knew about this. Well, the trial collapsed overnight, because you cannot have a situation where the head of the court is effectively on trial. So there are a whole load of machinations going on. And the one person and the one couple whose hands are completely clean in this scandal, Meghan, are Prince William and Catherine, the Princess of Wales. I mean, I ran a poll earlier today during my live broadcast of Outspoken, and I'd say I've got a really pro-monarchy, pro-royal audience, Meghan. We love the British royal family. 75% of my audience saying that King Charles must abdicate here, must hand the throne to William and Catherine. Now,
yeah, that's crazy, but like that was always my theory on that. And having been to the United Kingdom twice, I gotta say they love the monarchy. Like, if they could get rid of the Windsor Stuarts out the door and replace it, they'd find some other branch of the family to run the joint. That's just how they are. It's so much of the economy and so much of this tourism, but just so much like goodwill to. They're not giving up that monarchy anytime soon. I mean, it would be easier for them to do it than for Canada to do it, because in Canada, it would require to open up the Constitution, and no one wants to do that, having it led to 2 referendums in Quebec in the 90s. So nobody wants to open up the Constitution. That won't be for another generation before anyone tries that stuff again. So, and we'd have to do it, and that opens a whole can of worms. So they would. If they got kicked, we would keep them.
Now, his statement that you read out made it clear he has no intention of doing that, but there are lots of paths that I believe could see that end up having to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So in the path, are you saying that if Andrew calls Charles or needs Charles as a witness, like I told my brother the following, and he blessed this payment or he blessed that thing, even though he was just Prince Charles at the time, Correct. He wasn't yet king, that could drag him right into this legal proceeding and either kill the legal proceeding or kill Charles's reign as king.
Correct. Right. Because no one really believes, Meghan, that Andrew is going to plead guilty. Why would he do that? I mean, he would get guaranteed jail time. I agree with you. It's not going to be life imprisonment. That is the maximum sentence for misconduct in public office. But I know the type of guy that Andrew is. He is not going to plead guilty here. I cannot see a scenario. And what we don't have in the United Kingdom is the same type of deals that you can do in the US justice system, where you make a plea deal. That just doesn't really happen here. So there's no real motive.
Interesting. And that's maybe why they have such a low prison population.
For Andrew to plead guilty, unless he did want to keep his brother on the throne. So there are serious questions for King Charles. And there are also serious questions for the British deep state, Meghan. I mean, this scandal has been hiding in plain sight for 15 years. I was working at Murdoch's former newspaper, The News of the World, in a senior position in 2011. We revealed those pictures, do you remember, of Epstein and Andrew in Central Park in New York. That started this whole scandal 15 years ago.
Where Andrew went to visit Epstein after the conviction for soliciting a minor for prostitution, pretty controversial charge that he pleaded guilty to. And it was, of course, we now know, just the tip of the Epstein iceberg.
Yeah,
and
the iceberg. And we've been covering that here for a while.
Andrew went to see him and stayed with him, right? At his New York
with royal protection
townhouse.
officers. Do you see what I mean? This is where
After
the deep
fact,
state is pulled into this. Because why have the police spent 15 years choosing not to investigate Andrew? Because they probably knew. What did Charles know? What files are included at Buckingham Palace? We're literally in unprecedented territory, man.
Yeah, and I've been to, I've stayed near Buckingham Palace, so that's a pretty tightly organized place. You're not getting in and out of that place with by the servants' quarter without someone knowing what's going on. All the security staff had to know what was going on, and those guys are walking around with submachine guns.
Megan, and just to give you a bit of color about what's happening today, because we really never thought we'd see anything like this. There are currently 2 teams of police on the King's estate searching the King's property. So we've got Wood Farm in Sandringham, which is where...
Wow. Cops investigated like this. This is like some of the we've had some premiers get arrested here in Canada for various things and had like cops show up at their doors, and it's pretty wild stuff. And I mean, there was one I believe Manitoba or Saskatchewan government where the entire cabinet went to prison. So we're talking that level of stuff. The only one that didn't go to jail was the premier, who everyone said was just staggeringly naive about what was going on. He was the only one who didn't go to jail. But we've had other premiers go to jail for various things. Usually, one I know for sure went to jail for drunk driving. Like, that's the kind of thing you can go. That's a big charge up here in Canada, not compared to, say, the United States. I mean, if you get drunk driving conviction in the States, you can get you can be denied access to Canada.
Charles forced Andrew to move, but that used to be the home until his death of Prince Philip, you know, the late Queen's husband. So there are police currently searching that property, but there are also currently police searching Royal Lodge, Andrew's former home in Windsor, and that's on the Windsor estate, just a couple of miles from where William and Catherine live. So this really is totally unprecedented. And look, the one person, as I say,
what kind
who
of
has his hands
relationship
clean
do
is William.
Andrew and Charles have? How do these brothers get along?
Well, not great. Andrew has always been a bit of a buffoon, but the problem for Charles, Meghan, is that it was him who decided to bring Andrew back into the royal fold. Yeah. So you'll remember the relationship between the late Queen and Andrew was really close, right? She viewed him as
loved him.
Yep, she adored him. She never believed these allegations.
The favorite son motif, and that's why but I saw Dershowitz on one of these programs talking about it. I think it was Piers Morgan. And he said, the reason why they didn't want to do it is because he's Randy Andy and he's not guilty of doing these things, but there's all these other women he's slept with, and the royals didn't want that to come out. So that was kind of the reason why they paid off the hush money, because they knew that he would get in trouble for all the other women he was having sex with.
Spoke to people very close to the late Queen who insisted to me the late Queen always believed that Andrew was innocent. However, the big problem for Charles is that the Queen, despite feeling that way, had completely banished Andrew from public life. She had stripped him of his titles, stripped him of his royal duties, but it was the King who made this unfathomable decision to bring him back into the fold, to allow him to attend Christmas at Sandringham. You know, that is the #1 photo opportunity of the year. He even was allowed to bring his ex-wife, Fergie. There were memorial services where Fergie and Andrew were the most senior members of the royal family to attend, because Charles, he's quite a woke guy and he believed in this concept of forgiveness.
Well, yeah. That was rather foolish to bring him back in the fold. Just like, oh, well. Sucker born in every minute. What is it? Edward is my favorite royal, by the way. He did a show when I was a kid, all on English castles. It was really good. and he really wanted to be. He was supposed to be in the 35th anniversary of Doctor Who, and his apparently the Queen nixed it, which is too bad. That would have been so awesome.
Whereas you've got William, who has been saying, Meghan, and I'm not doing William's PR here, this is honestly a fact. He has been saying for 7 years after that car crash Newsnight interview with the BBC, where Andrew made a fool of himself, and by the way, told a tissue of lies. I mean, almost as many lies as Harry and Meghan told to Oprah Winfrey, right? Like, we know that now. And Andrew William 7 years ago said, Andrew's got to go. He's got to go. He's got to be banished, just like William and just like Harry and Meghan have to be banished. So for 7 years, Charles made a big mistake. And I also do just want to defend Queen Elizabeth II here, because a lot of people in Charles's court at Buckingham Palace are now trying to throw the late Queen under the bus. Meghan, she was 94 years old, and she was suffering from terminal blood and bone cancer, something that we chose not to report at the time.
Oh, wow.
She effectively had handed on the monarchy to Charles, who was operating as a regent. So
Right.
when this payment of £12 million was made to the late Virginia Giuffre, it was Charles who had to make that decision. It was Charles who had to sign it off. And I think it's...
Oh boy, that is not. Yep, forgot about the Regency thing. Hello, Stunner. Welcome to the chat. I know this might not be as much interest to you as it is to me, but you know, it's my monarchy, so I got to worry about it.
Really grim, blaming a 94-year-old with terminal cancer for that decision.
I mean, it doesn't seem surprising when you know. I don't know Charles's story as well, but Andrew just sounds like he would do something like that in a heartbeat. He would blame the late Queen. He'll blame Charles. He'll blame anybody, and his wife 10 times so. I mean, there's a lot of correspondence in the Epstein files between Fergie and Epstein, whom she loved. And she brought her daughters, the two princesses, to go stay with him right after he got out of his so-called jail. I mean, it was daytime release to his office, but technically he was in jail for a year. She seemed very close to him. Neither one of those two cared at all that he'd pleaded guilty to these disgusting charges. And you mentioned, and just so the audience is clear, again, right now he's been arrested for alleged disclosure of British secrets to Jeffrey Epstein, who was not permitted to have them, not the women thing. But all along, we've been looking at Andrew and whether he sex trafficked Virginia Giuffre, meaning Epstein had her, quote, working for him. She says she was trafficked by Epstein. She was underage 17. And she says one of the men she was trafficked to was Prince Andrew, who she says had sex with her and that it wasn't consensual on her part when she was a minor. And that this
minor in the States, not minor in Britain, but yeah.
And then to produce this picture of herself with Andrew and Ghislaine Maxwell in the background, which Prince Andrew would later say was fake, and actually gave this interview to BBC Newsnight denying that he even knew her. But now we see correspondence in the Epstein files between Epstein and a New York Times reporter, in which the Times reporter is saying they had consensual sex. This shouldn't reflect on you, Jeffrey. This is kind of an Andrew problem. And Jeffrey doesn't say they didn't have sex. That was all made up. He says nothing. It seems to support the notion that indeed there was an interlude. There's also a picture of Andrew over a young girl. Well, she appears young. Her face is like blacked out, censored, who's scantily clad on the floor in what looks to be like a sexual, playful position. And there's lots of correspondence between the two of them about hookups for Andrew that Jeffrey was going to provide. I mean, this is just as a reminder, here is what Andrew told BBC Newsnight in SOT 2 back in 2019.
July of this year, Epstein was arrested on charges of sex trafficking and abusing dozens of underage girls. One of Epstein's accusers, Virginia Roberts, has made allegations against you. She says she met you in 2001. She says she dined with you, danced with you at Tramp nightclub in London. She went on to have sex with you in a...
Yeah, now that being said, you know, how many girls get into nightclubs that are not supposed to be there? And guys end up going home with girls that they didn't card. That is an issue. And certainly I know lots of my friends who had sex well before the age of 18 who with older men and don't regret it. Okay.
House in Belgravia belonging to Ghislaine Maxwell, your friend. Your response?
I have no recollection of ever meeting this lady. None whatsoever.
You don't remember meeting her?
No.
She says she met you in 2001. She dined with you. She danced with you. You bought her drinks. You were in Tramp nightclub in London. And she went on to have sex with you in a house in Belgravia belonging to Ghislaine Maxwell.
Didn't happen.
Do you remember her?
No. I have no recollection of ever meeting her.
And, you know, he might be, in some ways, he might be telling the truth there. Maybe, you know, maybe he's banged so many chicks, he's forgotten who it was, or he was drunk, or whatever. But going, you know, those kind of things happen. But Randy Andy strikes again.
I'm almost, in fact, I'm convinced that I was never in Tramps with her. There are a number of things that are wrong with that story. One of which is that I don't know where the bar is in Tramps. I don't drink. I don't think I've ever bought a drink in Tramps.
That's true. I have heard. I should forget that he's famous for not being another teetotaler like Trump in that regard.
Whenever I was there,
it was just the most pathetic denial, Dan. I'm convinced I was never there. I don't think that's not what a truth teller sounds like. If I said to you, did you ever have sex with Virginia Giuffre, formerly Roberts, in this bar and buy her drinks beforehand, you'd say, no, it never happened.
100%. And the problem is, Megan, for Andrew, is that we now know that these were lies because we've seen all the back and forth between him and his team and Ghislaine and Epstein, where they even admit that the photo was legitimate, whereas you say they admit that there was consensual sex. And even more grim was the fact, because remember, Andrew told Newsnight that he had actually cut contact with Epstein after that meeting in Central Park. He was still sending Epstein emails, including pictures of his daughters at the time, sort of in their late teens and early 20s, to a pedophile. You had Fergie, who apparently was in love with Epstein and may have even had sex with Epstein, talking about the fact that Eugenie, her youngest daughter, was off on a shagging weekend. And the problem...
Holy Christ, what is wrong with these people?
That Charles also has is that he allowed Beatrice and Eugenie to keep their princesses' titles. They are still Princess Beatrice, Princess Eugenie. And there is new reporting today, Megan, that actually they may be questioned under caution by the police, that Fergie may be questioned under caution by the police. And of course, we're in this position where Andrew also remains in the British line of succession. Okay, he's 8th in line to the throne, but is that tenable?
Yeah, yeah. He's 8th in line for the throne. There's a lot of layers between him and that. So, anyways, sadly, we've lost the 2 watchers, but that's okay. This is the show. Next up, we're going to get into more of the stuff that more of my normal stuff. So we're going to do a crypto rich one here with Blaine and Holt, and that will be much more our speed up stuff. Yeah, here we go. Much more my kind of stuff.
Peace between Ukraine and Russia. The British, the European elites, as proxies for the City of London, what are they doing? The exact opposite. That's what we're going to talk about in this video.
Please like, comment, subscribe, and you'll find all the links to the guests in the description below.
Hey, Susan. Hey, Blaine. Thank you so much for making yourself available, guys. Hi, Rich.
With you?
Yes. It is Wednesday, the 18th of February. And you said, Blaine, how the City of London is doing everything to keep the war going.
Let's take a look at the players. You've got Russia, obviously. You've got Ukraine. You got the United States. And then you've got the leaders in Europe. And not just country leaders, but also EU and NATO. One of those groups, only one of those groups, has participated in zero diplomacy, zero diplomatic overtures. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Twice, leaders out of the EU have blown up peace efforts that were on their way to finalization. In fact, 1.5 million dead people ago, Boris Johnson went into Istanbul and told Zelensky, fight on. Well, not a lot's changed except for the corruption continues, the death continues. You've got President Trump, who is...
Yeah, pretty much. Yep, it's just going on like, this whole war could have been avoided had we just made the two Russian provinces into Quebec.
Very clear. It's not my war, but I am certainly trying to end the war. And I hear all of the mainstream media screaming out, well, Putin's not serious about ending the war. He's winning. There are military realities on the ground, so you have to account for those rather than listening to the mainstream media's proclamation that Putin has maximalist demands. I'm sorry, that's not how war works. So
yeah, that's the problem. So few people actually understand how war works, and they are brainwashed by World War II and just think that that's big giant advances. And it's like, it took a long time for the Soviets to get the Germans out of Russia. And by the 44 Bagration offensive, where you had like the lines cracked so hard, and there's like remember the friend of mine telling me that his great uncle had served with a Finnish SS unit in there, and they were just machine gunning all day long, and they'd run out of bullets, and then they'd have to retreat, and then they'd machine gun for as long as they could, and then they'd have to retreat because the Russians would never stop coming. With like that story about the ants. And when Bagration happens, entire cavalry divisions would run by through the Germans' lines in the opening offensive. The Germans lost more people at that time than I think at any time earlier in the war.
So where we need to get to is the killing has to stop. There is no military solution in front of Ukraine right now. But yet they put out propaganda articles to say otherwise. We tell ourselves lies in the West about how this is going. And the grift just keeps on going while good people die. And the EU still doesn't want to talk to Putin, which they're killing themselves at the same time with energy and all the like. So yes, this needs to be pinned on the City of London. They're globalist leaders, and they don't want to be anywhere near peace, because I'll tell you what, once it's known that Ukraine has lost this war, they're going to be the bag holders who have to face the European people and explain.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you've said, I agree with and is really sensible. And it's a very common refrain that I've heard over the years from army officers, well, military personnel. And you are, for people who don't know, retired US Air Force general. And you were at one point second in command to the US NATO contingent. And it is that there isn't a military solution to wars often, usually, right? It requires a political solution.
War is an extension of politics through violent means. I believe that's not Schleifen. I'm thinking of. Anyways, yeah. Limited wars and total wars, and this limited war is for some our total war. Anyways.
So I just wanted to emphasize that point.
Susan, and the war has always been political. I mean, the war has always been Russia basically saying to the West, no, we are not going to let you march right up to our borders. I mean, Russia has always been very clear. This could have been avoided if you had stuck to what you had promised us way back in the 1990s, which is that NATO wasn't going to expand, once we dismantled the Soviet empire. So Russia has been forced to a military solution because they saw bad actors from the West.
Yeah, so talking about a guy about this, and he said the problem was that the reason why they needed to expand NATO is that first they did the peace dividend and forced all the corporations to basically go down from 13 defense contractors to 5. And the deal was in exchange for doing that, to get the peace dividend through in the 1990s, we needed NATO to expand so those 5 remaining companies would have a place to sell their stuff.
Who had their own political agenda, which is to...
And of course, because there's so few of them, they're effectively a monopoly, or something like the Seven Sisters, and which is a name that doesn't get talked about anymore that much. But they just basically are so much like that. There's no competition, so the F-35 blows out of control, and boondoggle after boondoggle get approved into the military.
Get as close, get into the suburbs of Moscow with NATO if they could. I mean, ultimately, that's where these war hawks would have taken us. So I think it is, there is only a political solution, because that's what the cause of the war is. It's not as the, the Lindsey Grahams and the Hillary Clintons and the, Keir Starmers of the world say, Russian expansionism. No, it's Russia saying, we told you, you can't do this. We told you this for 20 years. You went ahead and did it. And boom, we're not going to let you do it any longer.
Yeah. And these people just are incapable of hearing the word no. They just do not know what no means. And then when someone suddenly stands up to them, they're completely shocked and don't know how to react to it.
I think the president was pretty clear the other day when this was raised, where he said Zelensky is the problem. It's Zelensky who's got to get to the negotiating table. Well, as Blaine said, we're not really talking about Zelensky. We're talking about the British keeping this thing going. And if you look at the, on the one hand, it's horrifying. On the other hand, it's absurd. The people who lined up at Munich, Hillary Clinton of all people, basically it was like an Indian war dance. We have to send them to
and don't forget the bartender.
Right?
Blaine, you are so bad. The bartender.
Terrible. I'm going to counsel myself later.
Sorry, please, Susan, carry on.
No, it couldn't have been clearer. And then, of course, you had Rubio standing there saying, no, we're really not playing by these imperial globalist rules any longer. We want to reestablish the principles of Western civilization, which is peace and economic growth. And you guys can do whatever you want. We encourage you to do what we're doing, because, by the way, you're destroying yourselves. You're deindustrializing. I took note of the speech that the Belgian prime minister gave 2 days before Munich at an industry summit. And he said decarbonization is causing an existential crisis. We're going to become irrelevant and we're going to become extinct. Well, yeah. That's exactly where they're heading. And the only thing, frankly, they have going for them is militarizing their economies.
But they can't. But they can't.
Which they can't do for long.
They can't do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like the Germans, they passed their conscription bill and then realized they were going to be arming nothing but Muslims, because that was the only ones that are going to sign up to fight. And they're like, maybe this was not such a good idea after all.
Blaine, I assume you may know something about what it takes to build armaments. But you need things like raw materials like nickel and tungsten and steel, and Europe doesn't have those, so it would have to buy them. And then you also need access to cheap,
we're going to be happy to sell to them,
reliable energy, and Europe doesn't have that anymore, so it would have to buy it with a euro and pounds that don't have any industrial capacity, productive capacity, or any collateral to back them. So, Blaine, how are we going to do? How say something? What can they do?
You paint some very dark shadows into this whole proposition of getting Europe into a wartime industrial base. But it's far worse than that. And where it's far worse is the fact that Europe is talking about building its own army and its own military capabilities. Not only does it lack the engineering innovation and creativity to get caught up to modern warfare. But it also is over levered. They're talking now. I mean, Ursula von der Leyen's talking about appropriating 15% forcibly out of all of the pension accounts of Europe, and
that is just nuts. They're talking about doing what they did to Crete on the entire continent. I can't think of anything more that you would get people with torches and pitchforks out on the street to murder your political leaders. Like, if they try that, if they do that, and I think they are dumb enough to do it, they will just have, they'll be strung up and killed, I think. I know, I follow Tom Luongo. He says that he's long on guillotines and electric chairs or something like that. Or no, that was it. Long on ropes and guillotines.
She calls it unused money. That's horrific. That's saying, Rich, I guess you have 15% unused money in that pension account. Be a darn shame if we didn't go build tanks with it. The whole point is it's a fantasy. I worked at NATO and I watched them spend 2 years just to cobble together a ready, quick reaction force of 1,000 soldiers. And they squabbled about what the rotations would be and who would do what to whom. They're far better at planning what will be the meeting on Monday and what will that be about. But really, honestly, it's a self-licking ice cream cone, and it's mortgaged. They don't. You can't build any of this because you don't even have the precursors.
Yeah.
So what they have to do is,
I just think it's like the computer game, and they can just summon up everything out of nothing. And like I have books over around here. Jesus Christ. This is the second of the duopoly books called Britain's War 42-47. Look at the size of this thing. Look at the size of this thing. Holy crap. And they want, and this is the second book in this series. It's all about British rearmament and their industrial capability during World War II. And these idiots in NATO and European Union just think they can create out of whole cloth nothing. You can't make an army out of nothing. The Germans were able to do it, start off World War II, because they had millions of World War I veterans lying around. You disarmed your guys down to nothing, and you think you could just magically summon it out of thin air without any industrial base, without any national unity. It's just stupid on a colossal scale.
Is go back to the old cliche: when you're in a hole, stop digging. They need to stop digging. Pay attention to your people. Work on the migration pieces and parts. Get Europe to get back to European values and stop the nonsensical war. But now that they're sending the world to a financial collapse, and they need a bad guy. And the bad guy, that's Vladimir Putin. And they want to hang it on him. But if you can't start World War III, you're not going to be able to. And now they're going to have a real mess on their hands. Now, I'm encouraged by this, and I'll stop right here. We just found out today this beautiful piece of news. I know Susan knows this. Christine Lagarde announced she's going to be leaving her post well ahead of her 8-year term.
She's the head of the Bank of the European Union. This is, I can't believe Tom Luongo is going to be, his market report today is probably lit. I'm going to have to check that out after the show. But oh my God, like, he's been constantly complaining about her for years and years and years, and how she is just always like freaking out over stuff. You know, and that's a good sign.
Well, I wonder why that would be. Could it be nestled into the Rubio speech, perhaps?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you look at her speech to Munich, which was entitled Geoeconomic Fragmentation. I mean, somebody got very creative with that one. But at one point in there, I mean, she, as much as, because it's a very quiet acknowledgement that they are not running the table any longer. because in there at one point she said, we have to be careful that we're positioned for a fire sale of vulnerable Euro securities. And then she said, we're going to have to expand the ECB's Eurorep. I don't exactly know what it is, but it's basically the thing that backstops the repo market, and bad securities. Why do they have to do that? Because they know that the United States is no longer playing the lender of last resort game. Certainly not for the Europeans, and probably not for Jamie Dimon either. If you look at the recent smackdown between him and Peter Navarro,
which I highly recommend watching. That is hilarious stuff. Telling them, you're calling him the usury. I was thinking my friend Owen be like high-fiving that shot. And that might even explain why Trump's numbers have finally climbed back up. Rasmussen has him back to 49% or almost 50% on a bunch of stuff. So it does seem to be every day every day the tariffs are working out. Every day we're getting stuff. He needs to clean out the Pam Bondi out of the Justice Department, though. That'd be nice. But yeah.
But if you read carefully some of the quieter speeches, as opposed to the raving lunatics like the bartender and Hillary, who did manage to sit
and the
on.
witch.
And the witch. Yeah, I couldn't quite even bring myself.
See, now I've poisoned you guys. Now you're playing my game.
Yeah, right. But you read some of the more sober speeches. It's sort of like, holy crap. We really are being outmaneuvered across the board, and the only place they can go is now this intense austerity, where they start stealing people's pensions to try and keep this thing afloat. But if you look at Rubio's speech, I mean, a number of people have commented, well, it was different than J.D. Vance's. J.D. punched him in the nose last year. Mm-hmm. And, Rubio did not shy away from attacks on globalization, the failed policies and so on. But it was this reassertion of the importance of the principles of Western civilization, and that it's an appeal, I don't think to the leaders of Europe, at least not most of them, but it's an appeal to the people of Europe to say, you don't have to live under this anymore.
That's exactly right.
I think that's what he's doing.
That's where the standing ovation came from. Because if you looked at the body language in the audience and looked at Kaya Kallas and the others, they really were wishing they could have brought a weapon to the event. And then as the folks in the back rows and the bleachers seats started standing up and clapping, I would say some of those are NATO staff officers, quite frankly. Yeah. But the standing ovation was across Europe, because Europe's got a choice to make, and that's what Rubio is saying. If you want to stick with us, if you want to keep Western values, if you want to restore your cultures, well, then you better grab on to a life raft called the United States of America.
Right.
Because if you're going to insist on committing this suicide, and by the way, Putin is not going to be your fall guy, then we're leaving. And that means 76,000 U.S. forces are out of here. We've got our own borders to protect, and good luck. But you're either going to surrender your cultures and your national identities, or you're going to hold these people to account. And I think I'm starting to see, at least from my friends in Europe, and I talk to them all the time, change in the air. I think we're starting to see the nascent changes in the wind in the European polity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm fairly.
And it's, it was interesting that
I don't think we're already seeing the fragmentation. It looks like the Western, or New Europe, as they used to call, as it was called by Donald Rumsfeld, and that are getting ready to leave and form the Visegrad centered around Poland. So that's going to be interesting to see, because I once wrote an article on Visegrad and made a game about Visegrad being invaded by Russia in the far-off year of 2020. So,
where did Rubio go as soon as this was over? He went to prop up Viktor Orban, and he went to Slovakia. basically saying, and
Good point.
And I hadn't been aware of this Belgian prime minister, not like he's some hero, but at least he's got one foot in reality.
Yeah.
Saying, no, these green policies are going to destroy us. And then you have Maloney. So, you start looking throughout, and you have not Tusk, but the other guy whose name I forget. Thank you. No, that's Slovak. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. So you're this is, I mean, we've discussed this before, but this is how Trump operates. He's not a regime changer in the sense of going in and just tearing everything down. He's constantly trying to build up new capabilities, and strengthen populations so that they can actually move in a direction to resolve their problems.
One note that you mentioned on the Belgian PM, Bart van de Wever, he had...
Thank you. I didn't know how to say it, so I never said his name.
he may be credited with saving us all from World War III, back when the history books are eventually written on this, when he was the last man standing on blocking them from stealing the billions of dollars of Russian money.
Right.
And said, you cannot do this, and we're not going to do this, because his country is holding those assets. Because they're not government assets of Russia. Most of those assets are privately held, private citizen assets. And the Russians have a very clear track record about protecting their own people, whether they're in the country or out of the country.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that would have accelerated, had they done that, the collapse of the European Union, because large money holders, individuals, hedge funds, governments would have withdrawn their funds from the European Union.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Capital flight on an epic scale. And just the people who don't get that, they just don't understand why that is just financial suicide for their countries if they tried that crap. Like, it's just these people are not used to being told no, and they're fundamentally very stupid.
All the pension funds you want, because they're worthless anyway, because all the investment left town. Yeah, no.
Now Ursula von der Leyen is saying we may have to get rid of the unanimous rule.
He wants that now. Yep.
Yeah, we may just have to. And she said we might not even have to change the charter. We may just find a way to do it. So they're
and the other idea that the Queen has floated is doing what she calls reverse enlargement, meaning since you're such an upstart and so problematic, Slovakia and Hungary, why don't you not be in the Union anymore? And it's like, well, that's another way to look at this.
Great.
Yeah, it's sort of like, go ahead, make my day.
Yeah.
Right.
And then possibly other countries will follow.
Yeah, I think.
Now, we got the Hungarian elections happening in a couple of months. So they're going to pull out all the stops, the European Union, to replace Orban with someone far more, well, with values.
I'm going to bet you that Victoria Nuland's tickets are already booked, and Lindsey Graham's, and that the National Endowment for Democracy has already blocked out rooms and is going to have a hell of a party.
Well, hopefully they'll have kicked NED out, but they have kicked out Soros out of Hungary.
Yeah,
so they're going to do.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of monsters.
Yeah.
And right now, boy, if I know that they all want to get Trump and they don't like Trump, but man, they don't like Orban.
Oh, yeah.
And you shouldn't discount them as just a circus show where they're going to fail at interdicting Hungarian politics, because all you need to do is go look at Kalin Georgescu in Romania and how they upended the entire country. They paid off everybody, they paid off the courts, and they destroyed it. And Romania is paying for that to this minute.
Yeah. Okay. And now the other thing that you both may not be aware of or may be aware of is that the Netherlands has announced that they're going to tax unrealized financial assets. Capital.
God, what is wrong with these people? God, they're so insane.
Gains on unrealized financial assets.
Isn't that fun?
So Susan, all your Bitcoin, all your stock. That's right. All your stocks in I don't know, in the Dutch stock market that you haven't realized, you're gonna have to pay tax on that, which again is just gonna. I think what they're doing and what they can count on is the European people and the British people as well will get right behind their government, said, yes, you're going to rob our pensions, you're going to tax our unrealized gains.
They're going to steal everything. They're going to steal everything.
You're going to censor our speech. You're going to scan our messages before they're received by our recipient through WhatsApp and other messaging apps. Yes, and you're letting in all these people from other countries and other cultures, and you're spending money on them, and you're not protecting us from them and our children from them. Yes, of course, we will sign up and fight for you because you're obviously fighting for us.
I mean, I think one of
yeah, of course, all of that was sarcasm, but just to think about it, like long ropes and guillotines, is what Tom Long always says.
The things that it's time to start doing very, very clearly is putting the brand name on what's going on in Europe. This is fascism.
Yeah.
And what really, but the point, you know, a lot of people think of fascism and they think of goose-stepping Nazis or authoritarians and so on, but it's never in a vacuum. Fascism is simply the political structure that you have to loot people to the point that you kill them. Because what you just said, you know, Rich, sardonically, you know, that the populations are just going to sit there and say, oh yeah, take my savings, take my children, take my future, take everything. You know, I think that's just terrific, and I'm going to keep voting for you.
I'll go and fight Russia for you.
And I'll go fight Russia, and I'll send my kid to go fight Russia for you. You know, you reach a point where people say no.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw that's what happened with Trump in 2016 in the United States, where we said no, and it's forced the fight much more openly, you know, into the public eye. But where you are in Europe right now, you know, with the free speech, you know, suppression and jailing people and everything that's going on, the name for this is fascism.
Right.
And I think it has to be said, because, you know, people get a little squishy sometimes because it involves the government. And so people want to be lazy and say it's socialism and it's, you know, this, that, and the other thing. No, it's fascism, where you are shredding all democratic norms, where you are setting up an authoritarian government. And the purpose of it is not to feed the government. The purpose of it is to feed this financial elite.
Right.
And we're going to use the government to suppress you and crush you, so we can feed that financial elite to the point that there's probably not going to be any of you left. That's fascism.
Yeah. They're, as I've said to people, they're burning down their capital resources.
Points to, because so far what we've really talked about is the European Union, but I opened with that it's the City of London.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's not the City of London. It's the European Union.
You mean a wholly owned subsidiary of the City of London? So they look, all these little urchins. First off, they're idiots. You have to find idiots if you're going to have them show up and just run script cards, have no morals, no integrity. This is pure malevolence, because all they are is little puppets on marionette strings going to their shadowy overlords. And that's why sometimes they just sound so incredibly stupid, because they don't have the latest cue card. They can't think an original thought until they're given another one.
Right.
And so when somebody comes up like a Mark Rutte, when everybody thinks he's some great NATO SecGen. I think that's ridiculous. He's an idiot. And what did he do in the Netherlands? Oh, poor Holland, they're getting picked on, because in the Netherlands, he's responsible for rolling up 3,000 family farms to accommodate high density housing. And there was no due process on any of that. And we're talking about farms that have been in their generational, in those families for generations, and they feed the Dutch and Europe.
Yeah, and well, like the most efficient.
Wait a minute, that gets to the food supply chain, which they are hell bent on weakening every day. We're seeing horrific stories about the same thing playing out right now in Ireland.
And they're doing the same in Britain. They're destroying the food supply. Okay.
Well, and if you have unrealized capital gains, You apply that to a farmer's land.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. And they'll just take it. But you know what they never do, these fascists? When you have an unrealized loss, they never cut you a check.
Right.
That's right. That's right. Your altcoins, Susan, they're underwater now. I'm sorry, no compensation.
No compensation.
Okay. Then you said about that these people don't have any brains. They have no sense, no intelligence. They didn't.
No,
You're
they're
suggesting,
automatons.
you're suggesting they didn't rise through their own merit, but they were appointed. Are you saying the same about AOC?
I'm not suggesting that. I'm arguing it as fact. Go look at any of their pedigrees of these silver spoon urchins. And this is the other funny part is they love to talk about war all the time. You would think that Kaya Kallas had been there on the beaches at D-Day. You would think that we would have heard. Yeah, she was at Stalingrad. She did the long march. She was at Bataan. The way that she talks about warfare, and when she goes, well, I mean, if we can't kill Russia, how are we going to kill China? And it's like, you are a crazy person, but you were selected for this role because you're a crazy person. So well done, my friend.
Yeah. And then something else I want to add to the mix, which is in June, I'm not sure the exact date, the 10-year divorce settlement ends between the UK and the European Union. And the UK stops paying alimony to the European Union. So one of the things that I think is being accelerated by Starmer's government and the European Union is Starmer reversing Brexit by stealth.
Yes.
And
yeah, I totally see that. Unless you guys reverse course or alter your course soon, that's exactly what's going to happen. Yep.
I don't see that happening. Even if Starmer goes, he'll be replaced by some other puppet, Muppet puppet, like Streeting or Andy Burnham.
Rupert Lowe's not going to save the day.
I have my concerns about Rupert Lowe.
Oh, you and I both.
Oh,
but that's another conversation for another time.
Yeah. But they're gonna drive for war with Ukraine. But is it going to be between Ukraine and Russia? Is it going to be successful?
Well,
I think
going
to prolong it.
I just think one of the interesting things right now, in terms of the negotiations, no leaks.
Sorry, Susan, say that again.
No leaks in terms of the Ukraine negotiations. There aren't any leaks coming out.
Right.
Which suggests to me that maybe the rubber is really meeting the road.
Right.
And they are drilling down and getting closer.
Yeah, I think so too. And there's honestly the Ukrainian army is near destination. And then I'm quite sure the United States side is pointing out you have more to lose here. So you right now have a seaport. You might come out of this without a seaport, and it'll be by military means. Yep. So you want to argue about teaspoons of dirt under Russian-speaking.
And if they lose Odessa, they have one smaller port to the west of it. That's not very much. But if they lose Odessa, it's game over for Ukraine. And it also means that Romania and Hungary and now have your crews controlling not the mouth of the Danube, but that river is now controlled by Russia. And that gives Romania, who they stole the election from, but Romania is definitely would be on Russia's border. Everyone would be on Russia's border, and they would have options of strategic. And that's why I've been always opposed and wanted to settle this war quickly, because in the end, I am pro-West. I don't want the Russians to win in that sense, though I don't like Ukrainians because, Nazis, but who killed a lot of my family. So don't give me that kind of crap. But yeah.
Donbass territory? Are you serious? Because what you'll be doing if you keep that territory is fighting an insurgency within your own people and within your own borders.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about the insurgency part of these things. The Russians are much better at countering insurgencies than we are. I mean, when what's his name, the Wagner leader Prigozhin led his little whatever the hell he was doing going to Moscow, and I got to tell you, I was in a room full of very patriotic military industrial complexes when that was happening, and they were all like cheering onwards, and I'm like talking to this guy from I think he was from NSA, and I said to him, what is Prigozhin going to do against a city of 15 million people with a brigade. How does that get? The Moscow police force could stop them. And of course, what really stopped them was the Chechens, who Putin deployed the Chechens, some of his most loyal troops, to fight the Wagner, Prigozhin's little whatever that was. It's just ridiculous.
Right. And if they lose the seaport, because they've lost the best industrial land, all the industry is been occupied by Russia. It's over in the eastern Ukraine. If they lose the seaport, then what has Ukraine got? It's just this dead nation.
I think if they lose the seaport, we really have to have serious discussions with Ukraine about, will there be a partitioning of sending what's left of Ukraine, back to the original countries? So do Poland, Hungary, and Romania then start to dice up what's left of Ukraine, because it's the only economic survival the people living in those areas could have? It's not about empire. It's more about, we'll take this on because that's the humanitarian thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. It's an awful, awful, awful tragic situation,
Yep.
which could have been so easily avoided by honoring the Minsk agreement, and then by Johnson not destroying that peace agreement in April 2022. All those lives that have been destroyed and ruined, and the country abandoned. And for people in Britain, if you oppose our government spending money on war,
and of course, I'm on Britain, so I can't really do much about that. But I know where he goes on that one, so I'm just going to end that one, and then we're going to go over to some Larry Johnson stuff here. I might not do all of this because it's an hour-long show. And
on the meetings in Geneva between the United States and Iran, wonder if there's about to be a huge war explode on that. Our focus is on that too, and we're going to talk about it shortly. There was another meeting, a diplomatic meeting, also in Geneva between the United States, Russia, and Ukraine, and those are trying to solve the one war that's going on there. But according to the headlines here, you see that those talks were very tense and difficult, said by all sides. So,
and that's going along with the no leaks that we just heard from the other episode.
This actually has less positive outcomes, even less words used to say something nice and put a good face on it than really any other level so far. So that has got some concerns, and I'm going to show you some of the reasons why that may be, and it's not what you may think. And to try and help us make sense of all of this global chaos today, we have back with us the ever popular Larry Johnson, Sonar21.com, a former CIA analyst and son of the New American Revolution, and of course, snappy dresser with the shirt. Larry Johnson, welcome back to the show.
I'm good at chaos.
I know. That's why I was really glad to have you on, because while everybody else is kind of losing their minds here, you're like almost relaxing, going, "Oh, this is my calm place here. This is what I live for." So that's why I'm really happy to have you on today. Let's start off with the Russia-Ukraine situation here, though, because in the after those talks, which were by all sides said, they were very tense. One of the lead comments came from the news lead negotiator, which has been changed from the last one with Medinsky. We'll get with that in a second. But he had a very short and kind of terse response to the meetings.
Они были тяжелыми, но деловыми. В ближайшее время состоится следующая встреча. Это все, что мы хотели сказать.
Yeah, that's all I wanted to say. They were tough, they were difficult, and there's going to be more. See ya. What do you make of that? That seems that's not what I expected.
Well, I don't know why everybody's surprised. The position of Russia has been very clear for almost 2 years now, since June 14th, 2024. Russia has not backed away from that position at all. And that the essence of that position is basically NATO, get the hell out of Ukraine and back away. And we're not giving up any of the territory in which we held a plebiscite in September of 2022. And that's Crimea, Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, Luhansk. Those are now permanently part of Russia. They're not going back, not going to change.
Yep.
And here's Ukraine saying, well, hell no, you got to get out of Donetsk. You got to give up you got to give up territory. So there really is nothing to discuss.
Right.
This is going to end on the battlefield. The Russians are not going to make any concessions. And people that continue to pretend that that's going to happen, like Witkoff.
You're a ceasefire. A number of people would go around talking ceasefire. I'm like, no one's doing signing a ceasefire. What do you know? When you knew?
I don't know if he's, smuggling marijuana into Moscow, smoking it, or doing some other mind-altering substance. It's not going to happen. The Russians have been quite clear. If Putin dared to sign off on that kind of deal, I think he'd be overthrown. I think there'd be a military coup.
Yeah,
he would not survive. The Russians are hard over on this. And if anything, what they've made clear, particularly through Lavrov's comments over the last 2 weeks, is that next on the menu is Novorossiya. And Novorossiya means that Odessa, Nikolaev, Dnipropetrovsk, and Kharkiv are also going to become part of Russia Federation if the inhabitants of those current Ukrainian oblasts vote to do so. But I'm pretty sure that they would. So, this is just political theater, because Witkoff carries no clout, and whatever Trump agrees to, there's no guarantee he can even get it through the Senate. So, the Russians aren't going to settle for Donald Trump's promise of, this is a big deal, just trust me. Not going to happen.
Yeah.
So that's
all gone.
I'm just mystified with people who are sitting here watching this and not understanding what's going on.
Let's take a look at the other side. I'm going to circle back again to the Russian side, because there's some interesting news that has been coming out from a couple of different quarters here, that there may be some divisions inside the Russian side, not quite the way people might think or hope in the West, that could actually portend even more aggressive action by the Russians in the future. But first of all, let's take a look at the other side of this equation in the Ukraine side. And Zelensky, if Medinsky came out and said, all I'm going to tell you is it's difficult, that's all I'm saying, moving on, Zelensky was more complaining.
The team must raise the issue of these strikes, first of all before the American side, which had proposed that both we and Russia refrain from attacks. Ukraine is ready. We don't need this war. We always act in a mirror manner. We defend our state and our independence. At the same time, we are ready to move quickly towards a decent agreement to end the war.
Well, now therein is the difficulty in the definition of a decent agreement,
right?
Because Russia
he's also looking at a military coup if he signs something like that as well.
Has what they consider a decent agreement on the table for a year and a half now.
And his bodyguard is made up of Special Air Service. British commandos are Zelensky's bodyguard. It's not funny. Wouldn't we see that same thing would happen in Maduro, where another small island was all his bodyguard? Kind of funny.
Now, and from June 2024, that doesn't seem to be suiting Zelensky any. And he's like saying, hey, stop shooting at our energy stuff, man, and then we'll have a decent agreement. What do you say to that?
Yeah. No, well, like I said, you've got two irreconcilable positions. This isn't like you're sitting down and having a discussion over, are you going to have vanilla ice cream with or without the vanilla bean specks? Okay. That you can have a negotiation over that, because it starts with both sides agreeing, we like ice cream. That's not this. In this case, Ukraine's position is none of the territory that Russia has occupied, including Crimea, belongs to Russia. It's got to come back to Ukraine. And Zelensky is, he's not in control. He's representing the puppet masters that control him. But the puppet masters that control them want all of that, because that's where the economic wealth is that they're going to exploit. And Russia's position is more inflexible, which is we have now, the people of these republics have now voted to become part of Russia. The Duma has acted and accepted it. It's been incorporated into the Constitution. We're not going backwards. There's no reverse gear here. Mm-hmm. So, Zelensky can sit and bitch, moan, and complain all he wants. And his choice is either accept the deal that's on the table right now, or Russia is going to continue the military operation and leads to the utter defeat of Ukraine, and by extension, an utter defeat of NATO.
Well, that does seem to be lost on Zelensky. And actually, that headline there you had a second ago, Gary, talking about Zelensky, he says he can't give away. You said a while ago that that Putin can't agree to those kinds of terms because he might be overthrown. Apparently, Zelensky feels like he's in a similar situation to where he can't give it away. So then that seems to circle back again that the only outcome is a military solution. I mean, is there any other way around it if both of the leaders are saying they can't do the one thing necessary?
Well, Zelensky's already wiped his rear end with the Ukrainian constitution by declaring not.
Yeah, well, the Ukrainian constitution kind of got wiped out a long time ago before even that guy showed up. So
not holding elections as constitutionally required. So he thinks it's a Chinese menu. He gets to pick and choose which entree he wants and doesn't want. Yeah, so no, that's a bogus argument on his part. But look, this isn't even about coming up with the legal justification. Let's deal with the reality, the brute force. Russia is going to destroy Ukraine militarily at some point.
Yeah,
because Ukraine does not have the infrastructure and personnel in place to sustain an operation.
They're facing a Bagration level event at this point. They've had their Stalingrads, but they're facing a Bagration level event, and then that's kind of it.
And to even have a 1 in 100 chance of defeating Russia. So I mean, it's going to come to a conclusion, and at that point, you know, when you've basically got a gun pointed to your head, you don't got a lot of room to negotiate, and that's where it's headed for Zelensky and crowd.
Now, one of the things about Russia is that they have the luxury, I think, of looking beyond the war. And they obviously have to look at the near-term stuff, the stuff that's right in their face. So they're looking at that, but they're also looking at things bigger. Sergei Lavrov, a couple of days ago, addressed a group in Moscow to where he seemed to be looking at both of those issues.
We also assist in the implementation of the flagship initiatives of President Putin, aimed at building an architecture of equal and indivisible security and broad practical cooperation on the Eurasian continent. This, among other things, presupposes the harmonious coupling of existing integration projects, the development of horizontal interaction through multilateral structures, and the creation of a comprehensive system of security guarantees for all countries of the Eurasian continent. Our concept also includes those countries of the European Union and NATO that will renounce hostile policies and recognize that there is no alternative to the practical application of the principle of indivisibility of security, which was repeatedly proclaimed in its time at the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, but was never observed by the collective West.
Now, he's been talking about that, you know, no security for one nation can be gained at the expense of another, literally throughout this entire war, actually before it even started. So that's been a common theme. But I just found it interesting that
no nation can do it on another unless they go to war with it and then literally just draw the border.
When he's talking about even looking beyond getting this one solved here, he still did not foreclose the possibilities of having a European-wide security architecture that includes both NATO and Russia. Does he really believe that, or is this just stuff for a domestic audience?
Well, no. Let's listen to what he said. The primary focus is what the integration he's talking about is Eurasian. That is Russia, China, India, and
all the countries in between. When he's talking about that, I've long said this. Russia's only securing its western flank. It has no interest in going in the rest of Europe, though. It wouldn't mind prying away some other countries into its orbit. What Russia cares about are all the countries that names end in stan: Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan. All these countries in the middle that we never even think about, but for the Russians that's their future. It's not Europe.
Already put some teeth into that in a number of ways. 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, Russia, China, and Iran signed a trilateral security agreement. And right now in Iran, Russia and China are integrating China's provided a radar, a sophisticated three-dimensional radar capable of detecting stealth aircraft. And Russia's provided S-300, S-400 air defense systems, and Chinese and Russians are working on integrating that. Yep. And what Lavrov said there.
Now, we all know that supposedly they all got destroyed during or didn't work when they went in to grab Maduro. But is that based on sophisticated jamming technology, or is that based on the fact that maybe they were cooperating with they were rescuing Maduro from Havana and from Europe?
There was. And if there are those countries in Europe, not all of the European Union or NATO, in Europe that want to come join and integrate with this process, great. We'll welcome them into that. But Lavrov is expressing now the thoughts that have been articulated previously by Sergei Karaganov. Karaganov has been a close advisor to Putin. And in fact, I've had the privilege of meeting and talking to him on 2 or 3 occasions. And he's the one that came out basically after the Maidan in 2014 saying, we have no future with Europe. Our future is in Eurasia.
Yeah.
And that's where we need to have our focus. That's exactly what Putin was saying there, that Lavrov was saying there, and recognizing, they're not going to exclude Europe if they want to come to their senses and join in that, but they're not. They no longer depend or look to NATO and to Europe as their future.
Now, one of the other things I want to talk about that regarding this discussion here, and barring these 2 days of talks, which ended without any apparent conclusion of anything, and that is that there seems to be a pair, two separate factions in Ukraine side and in the Russian side in connection with the United States that may be beyond the headlines, or at least hidden from the headlines, but that is very much rolling underneath. We're going to take a look first at the Ukraine side here. And apparently there is a split between the current lead of Budanov and another faction within the Ukraine side of Andrei Yermak, according to this Ukrainska Pravda here, which is citing an Economist article recently. This was yesterday. The Economist reports that divisions are emerging within the Ukraine's negotiating team. One group supporting Kirill Budanov, head of the president's office, who used to be basically their spy agency chief, and favoring a swift U.S. brokered deal with Russia, while another group aligned with Andrei Yermak, former chief of the president's office, is less optimistic and is basically behind Zelensky's comment that he made there a second ago, was that I can't give up this territory here. What do you make of this division apparently inside? And this is according to some of the Telegram channels I was looking at in the Ukraine side. There's a lot of conflict going on inside the tent. What do you make of it?
Yeah, CIA and British MI6 are fighting each other.
The greatest words I've heard in a long time. Not as crazy as the Charles abdicating, but that's great to hear that we're no longer going to be aligned with the Five Eyes in that particular way, because already Canada got kicked out because we're selling that to the Chinese. Britain's getting kicked out because too many Muslims in the country. I've long said if we're going to go, we need to free a Muslim country with nuclear weapons. We should start with the United Kingdom.
I mean, these guys are proxies. Budanov, Yermak, they're proxies. Budanov has got his head more than 3/4 of the way up the CIA ass. He's their guy. Or maybe I should say the CIA's got its hand up his backside. He's the puppet. And MI6 likely is they've got the relationship with Yermak. And as we've seen clearly, the United States and Brits are, they're moving apart on the Ukraine issue. The Brits are insisting, let's keep going, guys. Let's keep pouring the money in. Let's keep the battle going. And
you wouldn't believe how much debt the British put in their guilt towards Ukraine, and they had stand to lose an economic depression if they lose in Ukraine. That's why they have been pushing so hard.
On the U.S. side, there's less enthusiasm in that regard. And let's not forget that one of the opponents of Yeltsin, one of the opponents of Zelensky is Zaluzhny.
Yeltsin, there it goes back away.
The former general who, Yeltsin booted to be the ambassador where?
He said that Yeltsin again.
Oh, that'd be the United Kingdom. So, they're trying to figure out who can get into the best lifeboat as this thing starts to sink.
Mm-hmm. And in fact, speaking of Zaluzhny, there was a piece he just wrote here. Let me see if I can find it right now while we're talking. But he came out and apparently he's been complaining a lot that he was attacking Zelensky, because he's setting himself up, I think, and a lot of other people do as well, to be running for president of Ukraine when this next election is held.
Yeah.
And he was complaining in this piece, if I can find it, saying that it was Zelensky who misplayed the 2023 offensive operation. It wasn't him. And also Sersky, he said, was what was really a play here. What's going on there as far as you can tell us?
Yeah, they're just, again, this is the big power play by the West, by the United States and by the UK. They're the ones most invested and followed by Poland in what's going on in the interior of Ukraine. The problem with Zelensky is he's more of a neo-Nazi. I mean, he's really tied in heavily to the Azov and right sector folks.
Yep.
So, he would, he's not a face that the Russians are going to welcome, because one of their objectives is denazification. Put him in, man, you got, Nazification on steroids. And it's important to remember, again, Zelensky he's not the political force on his own. He's not like he's got some natural constituency.
Yeah.
He's a front guy for a bunch of, Jewish oligarchs, Kolomoisky in particular, that, he's been serving the interests, and it's been economic in large measure, because the resources that are available, particularly in the Donbass, remember, Ukraine is number 5 before the war and its original boundaries, number 5 in the world in terms of natural resources.
Right.
And the West is just, they're drooling over that opportunity like a wolf over a baby lamb, ready to go devour it. But, the Russians have interfered with that.
Yep.
Which is, again, one of the reasons we see such vitriol directed at Putin and the Russians, because they're screwing up the U.S., the Western plans, the oligarchs, to try to rape Ukraine of its resources, and Russia in the process.
Yep.
And so what do you propose? And I don't know if you have any insider information here or any of your Russian sources, or if you can just give us your assessment. What will Russia be doing with this? Because now you see that within the Zelensky camp, you have Budanov and Yermak that are vying, and that seems to be, as you say, a proxy between the United States and UK/Europe, and where they're wanting to go with this. And then you also see with Zelensky, he's also got somebody sniping over his shoulder here with Zelensky, who's looking for his job, trying to figure that out. So there's no kind of unified front on the Ukraine side. So 2 questions I got. First of all, how does Russia view that? What do you think that does to their views?
Well, again, they're going to continue pursuing the military objective. They attend these talks in hopes that, okay, maybe the Ukrainians will come to their sense and realize if we keep this up, we're going to lose more of Ukraine.
Yep.
But Russia does it also in part in order to show the Chinese and the Indians that, hey, we're trying to come out with an.
Yep, that's a good point to there, the Indians and the Chinese. But like I said, we're going to have borders redrawn around the world. We've already seen them. No one really cared when Azerbaijan carved off pieces of Armenia and added to its country. Where's all the diplomatic outrage about that? We're seeing constantly redrawing the map of countries in that particular way, but we are so focused on Russia and Ukraine, we kind of lose track of that focus. We're going to see a redrawing of the map in many other places, and we'll see how those go.
Negotiated settlement. We're not the ones that are imposing the roadblocks, but at the same time, I think they recognize there is no other solution but military victory, and that's where they're preparing. The general staff has got the plan in place, and they're proceeding according to plan.
Yep.
And I think by the end of this year, they're likely to have secured Nikolaev and Odessa, and I wouldn't be surprised that they could be on the threshold of taking Kiev. But I mean, there is no way that Ukraine can win this, that they can prevail over Russia. There's nothing they can do that would force the Russians to go, oh my God, what did we get ourselves into? We got to stop this.
Right. And that was my second question based on that comment there is that, okay, that's the Russian side. Well, you also have to look at the European side, because just on the military aspects alone, if all of the Ukraine side was unified, like, fingers in a glove kind of situation, which obviously they're very far apart, that we just pointed out. When you take a look at, there's no military path here, and
that's a good point about that. All that political infighting is kind of what happens when you get to a later stage of the war, where people start figuring things out like that. And the Ukrainians did start off fairly unified, except for the Russian peoples, and now they're not. And now we're seeing the internal fighting, the Goerings versus the Himmlers, for a good example.
See that there's fraction within the Zelensky regime, and there's fraction within the political entity of Ukraine. Why in the world would the European side, led by UK and British and French, why would they still be trying to push something that self-evidently can't work on any category?
Well, one is this historical hatred of Russia.
Yeah, there is a historical hatred of Russia. This is why all our relatives left for the New World, is to get away from the 1,000-year-old blood feuds that are constantly hitting us in that region of the world. I'm from Polish heritage on my father's side. My mother's side is Pennsylvanian Dutch, so they got out earlier. But I don't trust Germans. I don't trust Hungarians. I don't trust Romanians. I don't trust Russians or Ukrainians for sure. And I'm not even too sure about Lithuania. And we were in a Commonwealth with them for 400 years. Okay. Like, these are things most people don't know about this stuff, but to these people in these regions of the world, it is very current day. Though, all this infighting and fighting. We just don't think like that in the West anymore much, but these are still very true to form for these countries. And it's very important for us to recognize that when we're making these decisions, when we're talking and commenting and making decisions based on that.
And that's been updated with the cultural difference that Russia's returned to Orthodox Christianity and upholding traditional Christian values as a centerpiece of Russian policy. My God, Europe has rejected Christianity. Judging by the imagery that the French showed at the Summer Olympics 2 years ago, it was almost it's become like a demonic cult. That's number one. Number two, the resources that Russia has, the Europeans want that for themselves, but they can't get it.
Yeah,
right. So I can take the morality out of it. But you can't get it, even if you're a drug dealer or something. You realize there's limits to what you can do, and you go where you can go here. But what I see is the European side not acknowledging that there are limits, and they're taking themselves down the end of it like a gulch with a bridge out, and they're rolling forward even though they can see the bridge is out.
Well, there's a complete disconnect between the political class and the public. Right now, Friedrich Merz, the chancellor of Germany, his popular support he's polling at 26%. Okay, I think herpes gets a higher rating than Merz, but Merz is more popular than Macron and Starmer. Wow. And yet these are the guys making the policy and making the threats and claiming the direction forward. They're basically holding their own populations hostage. And meanwhile, the ones like Fico of Slovakia and Orbán of Hungary, they're actually trying to talk some sense about, hey, we got to deal with Russia here, and we don't have to be in this confrontation. You've got the European Union working to try to undermine them.
Right.
So it is
to kick them out.
It's a complete mess on the European side of the ledger. And they don't have a path forward to fix it. So they will continue down this path until they do something militarily stupid, which they are trying to provoke a confrontation up in the Baltic Sea with the Russians. And when the Russians start shooting back, the Europeans they're carrying an empty gun.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how that's going to play out here too. So that's a lot of the division really within and around the Ukraine side. Well, it turns out there's also at least some reports that there's some divisions on the Russian side. Although, as I said at the outset, it's not quite the way, it's not like with the Ukraine side where they're at odds over what they're going to do. The real question within the Russian side is how they're going to get this done and to how much they should negotiate away. Now, I'm going to show you here, first of all, a comment that seemed disconnected. This is from General Hodges. And by the way, just to warn here, ordinarily, when we show him, we say this is something that's crazy. Well, in this particular case, he has some information here that is related to the Russian and American side.
Yeah, so many of these American generals just are sponsored by the military-industrial complex and who I am invested in and have made quite a bit of money off of them. So I'm not against it, but it's just like so many of these generals come on and they're just mouthpieces for Raytheon and they're just cheerleading the war. And it's just like, guys, have you read a book on history once? Have you actually read any of the World War II books that you're supposedly have? No, they don't know anything.
Which has some interest to it.
The president has got his own timeline that's tied somehow to business deals, I think, that are probably already signed between Americans and Russians. I think they've already done this, and they're going to unveil it after what they think is going to be an agreement sometime this summer. That's why the president's pushing, by June, so that they can then unveil huge business deals just in time for the 4th of July and the 250th birthday of America.
Right.
I don't think that's the kind of thing that Ukrainians or Europeans, and frankly most Americans, would support.
I can tell you that would be very supported by the most Americans. Most Americans would support that.
Actually, I think a lot of them would if anything that gets it over. You may remember it was about two weeks ago or so, Zelensky came out and publicly announced that Trump had given him a June deadline. You will have this done. So there is some corroboration on that. Well, interestingly, that seems to be connected to something that John Helmer said on the Glenn Deason show. I think it was just yesterday, to where he's saying that there is a growing split. And I've heard this from another source that has direct access to claims to have anyway, to the Kremlin. And it says that, hey, you know what? There are a growing anger within the Kremlin that Putin is being too much deferential to negotiations. And apparently, like there is to a certain extent in the Ukraine side, within the Russian side, there's one element that says, hey, let's make a good deal with the United States and get them to come back in, and let's give them some good deals, et cetera, here. And then the other side says, oh, hell no, let's just go militarily and conquer the whole thing. Here's what he said.
Right now, Russia is winning on one battlefield, but undermining the trust it built with its allies, President Xi of China, Prime Minister Modi of India, Kim in North Korea, Raul Castro in Cuba, the IRGC in Iran. Russia is risking its alliances for a worldwide war, which will continue.
Now, he went on to talk about there a lot that he said that that he's been setting up this difference between the West, which you alluded to in a minute, and this Eurasian stuff. That's going on here. He said he could put that at risk by seeming Putin by being too deferential to Trump to get Western business on and trying to keep both hands on both sides. What do you know of that split within the Russian side?
Helmer doesn't know what he's talking about. And, in fact, last night he did that interview with Glenn Deason, and it was apparently last week. And Glenn was out of town and unable to get it posted. Helmer went off on social media last night, equating Glenn Deason as a Nazi collaborator. He called him a Quisling.
Wow. Yeah, Glenn Deason is definitely not that. Just put people on that are interesting. No, I do sometimes find his stuff boring, so I don't usually watch a lot of Glenn's stuff, or it kind of repeated. So I'm looking for new information, new sources, not just, the same old.
And then, so I guess he's decided to take that down off of X. I have zero respect for Helmer. He's a fool. The reality is this. No matter what deals Kirill Dmitriev is talking with Steve Witkoff, Dmitriev holds no position of authority whatsoever in the Russian government. Yeah. He does not command military. He does not command the economy. He does not command the various executive branches. Putin has left the lines of communication open with the United States. But the reality is this. They had an agreement in Anchorage. And as Lavrov made very clear last week on 4 different occasions, the relationship with the United States is going in the wrong direction.
Right.
Now, if someone would argue that Lavrov is a freelancer and he's telling Putin to go blow sand, I don't believe that at all, based upon my experience with Lavrov.
No.
Lavrov is a loyal professional, and he's not going to go out and start saying something like that, at least on 4 different occasions, where he said, basically, we had an agreement with the Americans at Anchorage, and they haven't followed through. They haven't done one damn thing they agreed to.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's
I wouldn't mind knowing what they agreed to.
pretty telling, number one. And when you look at it, what has the United States done in terms of a gesture to Russia to show that it is serious about reaching a firm business, professional, diplomatic relations with the United States? Has it lifted sanctions? Has it unfrozen assets? Has it returned the property that was taken from the Russians in December of 2016 by Barack Obama? Has it removed any of the prominent Russian scientists and public figures from the sanctions list?
Mm-hmm.
And has it reopened travel between the United States and Russia? No, 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 no. Or as they say in Russia, niet, 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 niet. Not one thing. So at some point, the reality is Trump, as Trump is, a bloviating bag of hot air, talks a good game, but doesn't deliver. And the Russians are looking for the delivery. If Putin has had a mental decline and decided that he's going to hook his wagon to Trump, good luck with that. But the rest of the Russian government,
That's how you really feel, Larry.
isn't having it. Now, does Kirill Dmitriev want to cut a great business deal? Sure, if he can. But the substance isn't there. We're not seeing the actions. Now, if Trump turns around the next day or two and says, you know what, we're unfreezing the Russian assets. Number one, we're going to start lift all these sanctions. In fact, since that Alaska agreement, Trump has upped the sanctions on Russia, and he's tried to punish third countries for dealing with Russia.
Yep.
And seized several ships as well. You can add that to the list.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the Russians I've met, they're not idiots. They're not fools. They understand this, and they look at what the United States is doing, not what it's saying.
Right, and that's fair enough. But what about, because I've heard this from separate sources, this may be a different kind of division, and I don't know if so much of it's a division, but there certainly appears to be some grumbling, especially given that this has now gone on longer than the Great Patriotic War, and many in Russia are saying, hey, we have a lot more combat power we can use, and we're not using it, and we're dragging this thing out. We need to really push through to success, and apparently Putin is...
Has it gone longer than the Great Patriotic War? June 41 to May 45? Maybe.
Obviously, Putin is saying, yeah, we're going to keep with this slow, methodical thing. How do you see that confrontation?
Well, again, it's a special military operation. It's not full mobilization. War means you fully mobilize.
I'm not too sure he's right about that. I don't think it's longer than the Great Patriotic War, but it's getting close to it. Yeah, February to February, 4 years. And 41, yeah. So it'd have to get to about May or June before it'd be longer. I'm pretty sure.
It's the society. And in mobilizing, when you go to, I've been to Russia 7 times now between December 2023 and as recently as November of 2025. You wouldn't know there's a war going on.
Yep.
It's not, the society is not mobilized. They don't have social controls because they're handling it as, let's say, more as a police action. They're under no rush. I love these. I love the Petraeuses and the Hodges and the Keens who come, oh, look how slow Russia's going. Hey, guys, how'd we do in Afghanistan after 20 goddamn years?
Yeah, right.
All right.
Well, when you put it like that.
Yeah.
Shut up. You've got no room to talk.
Yeah.
Because at least you can show.
Yeah, next time I ever run into someone who says that, oh, yeah, so how long did it take you to win in Afghanistan? 20 years.
progress. The Russians have moved forward. They have taken control of territory, and they are exterminating the Ukrainian military. And we see the body exchanges, which have gone on at an average of basically for every 37 dead Ukrainians, there's one dead Russian. And that has been the case from January 2025 through the end of December of 2025. Now, the apologists for Ukraine come and say, well, that's just because Russia's moving too fast and Ukraine doesn't have time to recover the bodies. Exactly.
Right.
First, you were telling me that the Russians are moving so slow. Now you're telling me they're moving so fast you don't have time to pick up bodies. Pick a story. I don't care which one or the other, but you can't have both.
Well, that's what Europeans do. The EU wants to have both ways. It doesn't work that way.
They're contradictory. Just pick one. Go with that.
Well, contradictory logic has never been a roadblock for us, so I doubt that's going to get solved.
Yeah.
I want to shift gears here because I know our time's a little bit more limited today. I want to talk about what's going on in the Middle East there, and we actually have a comment or a kind of a.
Well, I'll probably maybe save that. I'm doing my stream with Warhound tomorrow. And then Saturday, it looks like we'll have some stuff with the geopolitics guys, and maybe one or two of them will join us tomorrow as well. But I've been streaming for about an hour and 45 minutes, and I've actually had someone be appearing pretty consistently this entire time, or at least had a consistent watcher, depending on who it was, or might have been a bunch of different people. Anyways, I just want to thank those people who tuned in. And yeah, so if you like, oh, hey, Patrick. Hey, Paul, sorry. Glad to have you along. So hopefully you've had a good time. So yeah. Anyway, so that's my friend Paul. Hopefully we'll have, thanks. Yeah, hopefully we will have book club this weekend. I would like to see that. Thanks. Good to see you. Yeah, so we'll be doing another one tomorrow afternoon. Good. I'm glad to know. I'm glad you did. Anyways, yes, book club would be great to have on here. Yeah, because it's been a while and it just gets great. There's also, I don't know if you ever watched Two Way, but there's a Two Way group that meets every weeknight. And it's been a pretty good group of people. It's mostly right-wingers, but it's a handful of left-wingers. And I can send you a link if you're ever interested. Anyways, I'm heading out. And if you like this kind of stuff and you want to see more, like, share, subscribe. I'm going to send it out on my X feed. So, yeah, I'll send you the invite in Discord. Okay. See you guys. See you later. Bye-bye.